Hi everybody, I'm Jeff, founder of Screamin Santos hot sauce. Now today, I'm going to bring you into the kitchen and show you how to make something that right now is highly experimental, and I'm going to call this my Screamin Chicken Chili. So let's go ahead and see what we're cooking up here and see if we can get this chili to scream by the time we're done. Now, I'd like to highlight some of the cornbread that I'm making over here. This is the mix for it, okay? Now, this will be something for another video, but this is gonna be, I love to have this with chili, so this is gonna be a good side for it. And I like to use Indian Head stone ground yellow cornmeal. They have a great recipe on the back of the bag here, and I'll go ahead and post that on our page later on, but it's a great recipe for cornbread. Always comes out awesome. Now right now I'll tell you, I like to use cast iron. I always like to cook in cast iron. So this is actually a two-part pot. This is the lid to it. And you can use the lid as a frying pan to cook as I'm cooking up some of the green peppers. And I like to chop up all the ingredients. I'm gonna cook up the green peppers and the onions. Before I throw them into the chili, I'm gonna roast them a little bit here in this pan. Now, this is the pot. So after that, we're gonna dump them into this pot over here. I have the chicken defrosting in the microwave right now because I didn't think ahead to take it out of the freezer and let it defrost at room temperature. One thing with cast iron, I love to preheat the pans. I like when I drop the vegetables in there, when I drop the ingredients in there, I want to hear them sizzling as soon as they hit the pan. So it's very important to preheat them. Well, I guess it's not important, you don't have to, but I like to do it. Now let's look at some of the ingredients that we're going to be putting into this chili. The kind of peppers that I'm going to be using for this chili are bell peppers. Okay, I would be putting jalapenos in there. I do have some ghost peppers up in the cabinet. I'd be putting them in there, but unfortunately this is a family dinner. So if I put too many hot peppers in there, the chicken isn't the only thing that's going to be screaming in this chili, that's for sure. But I like a variety of bell peppers. And the way I like to cut them up, I like to be able to taste the peppers. Okay, when you're eating this chili, I want to be able to taste these peppers. So I'm not going to dice them into little pieces. When I get a size like this, okay, I'm going to cut it in half long ways. And then I'm going to cut them into chunks about this big. Because like I said, I want to be able to stab it with my fork. I want to be able to get this and some chicken and some beans all up on the fork, maybe an onion, and taste it all at once. I don't want it to be so small that I can't even find it in the chili. And I'm pretty much going to get the peppers, the onions, and some whole garlic cloves just frying in the pan. I'm not going to fry them too much, just enough to kind of blacken the edges so they'll have that extra little bit of flavor that I feel kind of comes from frying it when I put it into the chili. The onions I'm going to dice up a little bit more than the peppers because I kind of want them to blend with the chili. I want to be able to taste them, and sometimes what I recommend, at least with the red chili, is taking some raw onion rings at the end and just kind of using them as a garnish. But what I'm going to do with these is I'm actually going to cook them into the chili, kind of get the flavor of the onion going through the chicken and the other items that are in the chili. So here's what our little vegetable medley looks like at this point. And like I said, I'm not going to cook it in here for long, just long enough to kind of blacken the edges. I think it helps with the flavor a little bit. It also helps with the texture of the food. But I'm going to take this opportunity as well to put some seasonings in here. Because just as I'm seasoning the meat and the chili itself, I'm going to season these. Now, when I'm seasoning vegetables that are frying, this is where I'm going to use the garlic salt. Okay, I'm going to use the garlic salt. I'm going to use a little bit of black peppercorn. I'm going to grind it over there. And I always like to use a little bit of oregano. I don't really make anything without oregano and without garlic. So those things, and speaking of garlic, some garlic powder. It's that time of year. It's cold. It's coming up on Halloween. You want to keep the vampires away. This is the time to use a lot of garlic in your food. Not only that, down here where we are in the marsh, garlic is supposedly going to help to keep the mosquitoes away, which, believe it or not, are still out even in late October. Chicken's done. I'm getting ready to chop that up, and we're going to mix this ingredients together and see what it looks like. So meanwhile, I got the vegetables cooking up over here. I'm going to start putting the ingredients in the pan, or in the pot I should say, that I'm actually going to use for the chili, get them cooking, and that way when I chop up the chicken I can throw that in there. So some of the major ingredients that I'm going to have aside from these vegetables that are cooking over here are kidney beans. I'm going to put some Bush's kidney beans. Bush's is always my favorite when it comes to beans. Any kind of beans, I always like Bush's. So I got some light red kidney beans. I also have some Bush's black beans. So this is going to be like a 2-bean chili. And I'm going to put some corn in there. So I'm going to start to drop these. I'm going to pour these into the pot. And then I'm going to take the chicken and we'll mix it all together. See what it looks like. Now, some people are going to think I'm crazy. But when it comes to opening cans, I've gone through a lot of can openers. And I have to say, my can opener of choice is this. It's a classic 1940 A&J can opener. And this thing, obviously, it hasn't broken. It's been like 80 years since this thing's been in service. And it is still opening cans like a pro. And since I've had this can opener, I've gone through 3 of the ones where you turn the crank. So I like to stick with the classics, I gotta say. Now typically with chili in the past, I've drained the beans. I'm not doing that for this. I'm gonna keep the juices in there with the beans. I think that's gonna add for a little more substance and a little bit of added flavor. I would, however, recommend draining the liquid from the corn because you don't want a bunch of that can water in there. Or maybe you do. If I was cooking just the corn, I'd leave it in there, but being that it's chili, I don't want it too watered down. It may be more ideal if you actually cook the chicken first. That way you can mix the chicken and the vegetables and the beans all together in the pot at the same time. But as I mentioned earlier, I didn't do that. Hence why it's been defrosting the whole time I've been talking here. So I'm going to take the chicken and now I'm going to cut it up. I'm going to fry it up. And then we're going to go ahead and mix that into the pot. Meanwhile, I'm going to let this simmer a little bit over here with the vegetables and all the other ingredients in it. As with the peppers, I want to make sure I taste the chicken. I want to make sure I know the chicken is there. So once again, I'm cutting fairly good sized chunks of chicken to put into this chili. I used approximately 3 pounds of chicken breast for this recipe. And I'll try to list the ingredients at the bottom, though they're approximate because I kind of just wing it when I go with a recipe for the first time. I should take some better notes, but I'll put those approximate ingredients down there. Now, a disclaimer, when you're cooking chicken, always test the internal temperature. Make sure it's cooked because you could die or get salmonella or I'm sure get fairly sick if it's consumed and it's undercooked. Now I'm just going to eyeball it and I'm just going to see when this stuff is done and go ahead and mix it in with the other ingredients. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. Measure the internal temperature. Measuring the internal temperature is good. Now you may be asking, Jeff, what is going to make this chicken scream? Okay, I can't make it as hot as I would like to. That's something for another show, perhaps an episode of Too Hot for Your Kitchen. I'll do something like that where I come up with all these hot recipes, but I'm going to use some cayenne pepper. I'm going to use some chili pepper. I'm going to use some crushed red pepper. We do have some black pepper on there. Okay, one thing I like to put in the ingredients for chili is a little bit of liquid smoke. I like to put about 5 drops of this in there. Give it that liquid, not liquid flavor, but give it that smoke flavor. Make it taste like it was cooked over a smoker. That's always a good thing. But we got that. Some of that we're going to put in here. And here's what the chili powder looks like. Because you can't have chili without chili powder. I just don't think you can. I'm also going to put a little bit of paprika in there. And another thing I like to put is cilantro. So I'm going to put some cilantro in there. So these are the ingredients I'm going to put. And I'm just going to sprinkle them in there basically to flavor. Which means I'm going to put a lot of it in there when it comes to the hot pepper. But not as much as I'd like to. Like I said, just to flavor. And once again, I am going to season the chicken as it's cooking. I'm going to put some garlic salt on there. Okay, pretty much the same thing I season the vegetables with. These are the things I like to season the meats with as well. I like to season while cooking, while the ingredients are cooking with these particular things. Just because there's certain things that I like to put in the pot and let it simmer in there, and I'll put a little more of this in there, but there's also certain things like garlic and oregano that I really want cooked in to the flavor of the meat. So this is where I'm also adding a little bit of this hickory smoke. Okay, put more than 5 drops in there, as you can tell. But it is some good stuff. I want to taste like I'm eating at a campfire. And we also want to put some garlic powder and ground black pepper on the chicken as well as it's cooking. I added my first pan of chicken in there, and it's filling up this pot. I'm not sure if I'm going to fit it all, but I'm sure going to try. I eyeballed it, and it looked like it was done. Don't ever do that. This one over here is still cooking, but I gotta say, it's looking good and it's smelling good. So as soon as I mix that in, that's where I'm gonna add the Scream. I'm gonna put the lid on, and I'm gonna let this stuff simmer while the cornbread cooks.